Hello and welcome everyone to Dreaming from the Dark with Sharon Zeugin. My name is Heather Leavitt Martinez. I'm the creator of the platform Let's Letter Together. Just want to tell you a couple of things before we get started today. Let'sLetterTogether.com was originally designed for visual practitioners, and I see a few visual practitioners in here, but it grew into a platform for calligraphers during the pandemic for them to learn and also for them to teach. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with many master calligraphers as a student. And since I started my tech hosting, I got to decide who I wanted to work with. And so I have three sweethearts. It's Carol Dubosh, Mike Gold, and Sharon Zeugin. And I call them the sweethearts of lettering. And just for those of you who may not know, Pangram Day is coming up, and they've all agreed to help me out with that. We're still working on getting the word out, but I will put that in a follow-up email to you about Pangram Day, how you can get involved and create your own pangrams. And I want to thank you all for being here, especially those of you who paid to be here. I know that this is a free session, but some of you did give a contribution, and want to let you know that that goes towards our scholarships at Let's Letter Together. And I'll also put a link in the chat and let you know about those as well. But let's
Hi,
get
welcome.
started today.
Yes, welcome everybody. Well, I think we can start by maybe having a conversation a bit about what what inspired this particular gathering. I mean, the obvious thing is we miss you all and we appreciate you all, and we also want to offer an opportunity for your feedback and impact and input about what we could all co-create together next. So
Right?
you
We
can speak to that.
we illuminated the dark. We danced with the dark. Some of you joined us for those classes. If you didn't, but you still want to enjoy the recordings, you certainly can. And as Sharon and I we love working together because I like to create just enough structure for her to dance in and then watch her go. And I think she enjoys that too. And in the process, we said, what's coming up next? And some of you may know that Illuminating the Dark really came out of a time where we were challenged with the pandemic, wondering what's going to happen next. And then we decided a year and a half later to come together and dance with the dark and dance into the dark as we were going into in the northern hemisphere, going into right after the equinox and going into this darkness that is now coming into the light again, right? Because the solstice is happening and we're back, and we thought this would be a great way to harvest from all of you. What did you learn so far? Where do you want to go next? And so we're looking at this summer, right? So beginning of August, looking
Mhm.
at offering another course, and wanted to find out from all of you, what do you need until then, and what will that look like, so you can help us design that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to also put a framework on our discussion, this is kind of a very personal thing for me too, that I'm calling this my year of effortless creative self-expression. And I'm looking to experience flow more in my life. And we'll be talking a little bit about that throughout the hour. And hopefully, words probably aren't best to define it. You know it when you're in it. And the overall invitation is for today and moving forward is, first of all, maybe asking the invitation is to ask, how do I get into flow? How do I apply that? How do I do that as a calligrapher or as an artist? And how can I make space for that during this year?
Yeah. I would love, just by either a show of hands or using the reactions button, how many of you have been in the flow state? What does that feel like? I want you to, if you've been in that, wonderful. If you haven't, great. See some hands raised. If you haven't, you're wondering, what is the flow state? Well, I subscribe to the way Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes the flow state in terms of being in the now, being in the moment, and having a very clear focus and getting the reactions that you need while you're in that focused state. What happens a lot of times is you lose track of time, you get incredibly productive. And if you can stay in that state, for a longer amount of time, you can get really productive and find yourself creating things maybe you didn't anticipate when you first started. And I took it for me myself. I decided to take 3 weeks and physically practice being in the flow state. And I took it to an extreme to where I was practicing being in a flow state for several days. It was exhausting. I don't think I'll ever do that again. What got me out of it is I had to finally go to the grocery store and get groceries. So that happened. But yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit, I think, throughout this year, right? Sharon and I talked about maybe we'll sprinkle in a couple of more live sessions before August to kind of check in with you and give you some ideas and maybe some tips and tricks on how to do that. And I'm working on some guided visualizations. And there's 8 different love attributes to flow state. And I'll talk about each one of those as well. Yeah.
And I would like to suggest, because we are calligraphers, because we are artists, and because we asked to have whatever tools and materials with you, I would love for you to, or at this time, just take whatever tool that's most comfortable for you with you and start doodling, playing while you listen. There's no other direction. I will show you what I've been up to this morning, and hopefully we'll get time, or we'll take time at the end. I can walk you through that. And one of the videos we're going to show will invite you to do this. I am going to, and I'll speak more to it later, but remember those caps. This is something we can play with. I'm writing out the ABCs, and as I'm going, I'm thinking of words that I want to infuse my year with. What am I doing? What do I want to do? What am I embracing? And so that's something, again, it doesn't really require direction, but that's a way to kind of doodle our way into setting some intentions for the year. So you're welcome to play with that, or just play with making lines. Remember the press and release exercise. Remember just taking the line out for a walk. Remember that it doesn't matter how fancy the tool is. It doesn't matter if it's a colored pencil. Well, I'm working on black, so it helps to have colored pencil, just so for the contrast I can see. But just being acquainted with the tool and having it be an extension of ourselves, that's what I've been up to as a practicing artist, calligrapher, is that I want the tools and materials to be like an extension of myself. And so that's the invitation as we continue.
Yeah.
So I just compiled, I know, and I think, oh my gosh, this is just highlights of my own work, but just showing you the whole intention behind these classes was to help you connect more personally with calligraphy, and to also take what we know about italic in particular and Roman capitals, and play with expanding our visual vocabulary using the wonderful structure, the architecture of that lettering, so that we can not just learn it to be able to repeat it, somebody else's version of those things, but to be able to fully embody the letters so they become our own. And also, when the letters become our own, then we can start even getting more bold, perhaps, and connecting the words that we write, which is what we did with illuminating the dark, with the letters that we make. And as in my calligraphic journey, that's what I have been doing all along. At some point I empowered myself. I said, my words are enough. I will use my own words. Then I don't have to worry about copyright. But also, I love the fact that I'm closing the gap between the letters I'm constructing, the forms, the shapes, the composition of the letter forms with my actual the words that mean something to me. And I think that that is what has helped my calligraphy grow and dance. But I'm just going to give you a little, share with you right now a little walk through some of the highlights of my own work that I was trying to inspire you to find your own way within which to inspire your own way.
Ai, Deus se sabe, meu amigo, como eu sem ele estou em vida. Ai, Deus se sabe,
In all these pieces, I'm using my own words.
eu vivo sem ele, amor. Eu sem ele estou em vida.
The infamous grackle writing. Improvisation.
Como eu sem ele, enfim, vou lascar, me lembrar e vou namorar. Lascar, esconder, comigo. Vergas meus olhos que choram e vou.
I loved seeing these and revisiting what you covered in both classes. That's wonderful.
Well, I want to say that when I look at some of this, I don't want to call it work. When I look at it, I realize so much of it is done. So much of what I'm up to is in the category of just play. And I was talking to Heather about that earlier, that how I've even had to change my attitude towards play and take it seriously, because I used to think, oh, everything that I'm doing over here doesn't count. It's just in the play category. The serious stuff is over here where I set an intention. I'm going to paint that landscape and make it a mountain. Every time I try to do that, and that's not to say you don't do that. There are times when we must set an intention and have it fully, mapped out and then realize it. Absolutely. Alas, my journey has been about trying to do that, and then something in me pulls me into an entirely direction where the thing I was painting that started out as a landscape becomes something else, and then I'm in it for the adventure after that. I just have to let go, and it's anyway. So in looking at all that, I guess my invitation, and I'm probably repeating myself, has been, what if we just go with that? What if when you're writing, you get into that flow state and suddenly things start to happen, and instead of panicking and going, wait, I'm going out of bounds or I'm going off the lines, what if we just follow that thread? And so that's another reason I wanted to, plant that seed of how do we embrace those surprises that come up when we drift into, not drift, but we actively embrace a flow state. How do we allow ourselves, and can we allow ourselves to improvise? And I think so much of life is about that. As we set our intention, just like I did around Christmas, and I was stuck with COVID. So I pivot and I adapt and I start reading all the books that have been sitting by my bedside table because suddenly I'm forced into isolation. So learning how to pivot, adapt is, I think, an interesting practice for also tuning more deeply into ourselves. So the bottom line, just to sum up, and I'll keep coming back to this, is these classes have been, yes, they have been about skill building, but more importantly, they've been about offering you, I hope, an opportunity to play, explore, discover, experiment, and to connect more deeply with who you are, what you want to say, why, learning more about why you want to say it and how you want to say it.
I love that. And I'd love for anyone that feels called to share, what are some of the insights that you may have experienced or ahas if you took the Illuminating with the Dark or Dancing with the Dark classes with Sharon? What were some of those key takeaways from those experiences? And I know we talked some about that in the course, during the course, but if anybody would like to share now, we'd love to hear from you. And I know that as I was looking at some of the things that Sharon was sharing in her slide presentation, I remembered doing rhythmic italic. I remembered working on Roman. I remembered doing some of the grackle, but there was more to that. What are some of those other insights and ahas? Hermione, I noticed that you're unmuted. Would you like to speak?
Yes.
Good to
One of
see.
the things that happened to me was learning to let go of it could be better. If I did it again, it could be better.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. Um, and I think playing strengthens our skills. This is how little kids learn. This is how little kids learn about the world. They sit down and they play. And my youngest granddaughter is 10, and she comes down here to the studio and she has an idea and she just does it.
Yeah.
She didn't think about it. She just dives right in and does it. And it's like, I need to learn how to do that again. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I love this time that we have. There's enough instruction and there's some time to play. Who else? Thank you, Hermione. Who else would like to share? Joyce, did you?
Yes,
I
it
noticed you
was
unmuted.
Einstein who said that play is the highest form of research.
Ooh, wonderful. I love that. I'm writing that down. And those are great words for us to practice with too. Thank you for sharing that.
One idea that I really liked was the idea of building an alternate form library.
Yeah.
And I made myself a little book, and I didn't count, but there are 26 pages in there. And I could go and I can fill, a letter a page, and it's like, I'm sorry I didn't think of that earlier. I
Yeah.
think that's a terrific idea.
Yes. And I
And
love that you brought that up because we can create our own exemplars. Those can
right.
serve as a new foundation from which to work and then go from there.
For me, it was, of course, yes, all about learning to play, but letting go of that notion that Roman caps are terribly formal and you have to do them perfectly, that you can actually just play with them. I mean, permission to do that and to relax them like this. And yes, to get into the play mode, I think was just really exciting for me.
You know, it opens my heart when you say this because Sharon and I have had so many conversations about Roman hand. And Sharon, I'd love for you to speak to that if you feel so called. I see Roman hand as a physical form that all of our letters can live on. It's a foundation from which we can grow. And I learned Roman hand from both Hermione Miller and Sheila Waters, and so I know that feeling that oh, I've got to get this right, that tension. And I think what Sharon does for us, she allows us to let go of that feeling.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't want to minimize the that it is a serious undertaking to learn any letter form. Romans, though, seem to be extra laden with angst. And I think because I know when I was coming up as a calligrapher, I went off to Roehampton, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to be enlightened. And I, again, my teacher, I probably said this before, but my teacher, Ewan Clayton, wasn't interested in my questions about how do you do the serifs. He was like all about teaching us the fun of the bones. Here are the bones and the relationship, how they work in concert with each other, and what the basic, the geometry that that related them all, the big round O's to the narrow letters to the medium letters and so that was kind of a revelation that it wasn't about just the trappings, and that's what I was all about. Of course, I love the trappings of anything. I love bling and getting dressed up, but no, it was about that. And then I realized, wait a minute, you don't, it was farther than down the road. I realized you don't have to use a broad edge pen to do these letter forms. You can use your elbow in the sand. You can use the humble pencil. And that given myself permission to not be a master at broad edge Romans was huge. And I say shout out to those who follow that path. And yes, we need you out in the world. That was just not my part to play. And so making peace with that. And then realizing in my own little rebellion that I could feminize the Romans, and thus began the journey of personalizing the letters. And in my act of rebellion, I discovered that I didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I keep coming back to the Romans and thanking them for they allow the structure, they allow they're an architecture within which and in relation with, I can dance and move. And so that's what I hope that you all have, that you can continue to have that dance. And when things get really wonky and out of whack, we go back to our chiropractic. That's when if I'm getting way out, I'll just I'm just gonna write the alphabet out with that pressure and release, slowing things down as I construct the letters, remembering every once in a while to add a little pressure at the end of the stroke. But to do it with joy and breath and full embodiment.
I love that. And I know that some people can't always visualize Roman. We've got to go back. We've got to look at the exemplars. We need to look at the graphs, the templates, and maybe try to get it exacting. But for me, it's so refreshing to go off and try, like your letter, Roman capital A, all throughout this page. I look at it and I try it all the time. And the first couple of times I tried it, I was like, oh, that's not Sharon's A. And then I go back to Roman and then try it again. And then eventually I find it in myself, and it feels like this, I can relax because it works, and it's not Sharon's A, it's not Roman's A, it's my A, right? So to find your own letters in this process is beautiful. And even if you have an entire page full of one letter that's lots of different variations, you don't have to love them all. You've just documented your dance. Yeah, so someone's asking if you can zoom in a little bit more. I know that's a little hard to see, especially when we're both spotlighted. And I also want to ask, what would you like to do next as you see what Sharon has shown so far and what she's talking about today? What would you like to see happen between now, if you were to set some learning intentions between now and August? What are some of the things that you would like to learn from Sharon?
Well, Heather, I would like to thank you and Sharon both for addressing Roman's other alphabets. As a teacher, I taught over 20 years, and I would go into a classroom ready to teach the Roman. This is the way the Romans is. This is the italic. Let's strive to make it perfect. This is what we've been given through the generations. And for you, Sharon, I thank you for the dancing in the dark. to help me understand that I could become free with the A, the Roman, any of the Roman letters. I tried to go into the Asemic direction for a couple of years, and I found it very troublesome. I had taught too many years of make the correct A. And so thank you, Sharon, for opening up the door and allowing all of us to understand that the A can be based on the Roman and still be our own. And I'm sharing what I took from Illuminating the Dark. Has nothing to do with lettering, I don't think, but you opened up the door to let me know I could write haiku.
Wonderful.
Yay, yay, I love that. Connecting our words with our calligraphy is such a, it's a passion of mine to invite you all to do that. And I'm so happy to hear that, Dolores. Thank you.
I'd love to know, what else would you like to learn from Sharon, knowing Sharon and her work? So if we were to think about what's happening in August, what would you like to learn?
Well, I'll continue with what I was saying. What Sharon also did in Dancing with the Dark is go through the elements of design. And I never related using the elements of design with freer lettering. So for me, I wouldn't mind concentrating on the elements of design and putting it together with the personalizing of our own letters.
Wonderful.
I'd like to see more work with writing our own words, and then playing with them.
Wonderful. Putting your own words down, working more with haiku. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I love to do is research
Chin
words. Yeah.
Chin quains are also fun.
What's that?
A chin quain.
Can you type that in the chat?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good. Thank you, Margaret, for sharing that as well. And I'd love to extend the invitation that if in the coming weeks and months that you have an idea and you think about Sharon, please let us know, because we meet quite frequently and have these wonderful conversations. We talk about everything and we'd love to be able to design something that really fits what you're needing and what you're wanting. I know this is a lot all at once. And so we do talk a lot about tools, and very simply put, Linda's asking what the tools and pencil and paper that Sharon's using, currently using. And I can tell you, or Sharon, you can share whatever you feel most comfortable.
Yes, I just wrote it in the chat.
Yeah.
This is I have this at my desk, and it's like Canson black drawing. It's a journal. And so, so much of my, class, what I, coming up with ideas for things are, this is my own personal journal too, but I did a lot of work, play, not work.
Yes. It's so easy to slip back into that. And I love what Ludi is saying here is they would like to learn more about combining words and imagery, and more about finding our own expressive gestures for different moods and intentions. And that is such a great request.
Mhm.
We certainly do talk a lot about different types of materials, but let's talk more about what it is you want to learn. And I think that combining words and imagery, so beautiful. I have one of Sharon's pieces right next to my bed. I get to look at the crows before I go to bed.
Yeah, these are again from our class that are just real, simple images. certainly not super highly rendered, but you can have just like a very simple illustrative thing juxtaposed with your lettering. And this is all done with colored pencil, by the way. What I'm using right now are these Eno colored pencils that you can see every once in a while I'll stop, and it's like, because even though I have a very light touch, I'll break the lead, but I've just had such a good time with them. So yeah, I love the idea of, in fact, that was one of my desires, is to do a more deep dive into, again, what Dolores was suggesting might be an interesting focus is on the composition, but that, like, really we could spend more time with just composing lines of writing, that the line of writing itself is its own composition, and then how do you relate it to something that's maybe more representational, a kind of image, not just a background of color or abstraction. How do we do that? My whole calligraphic play is about doing that. So that might be something in the next month, or in the days ahead, to play with. And I really do advocate keeping a journal. And a journal can be these are disparate pieces of black paper that you've all seen before. But I tend to bind them together ultimately and compile them. But if not that, this journal is really fun to have. And I find that, again, if I'm in a meeting or a Zoom meeting, I can just have it at the ready. And that's when I play myself into some interesting things. The other day, I'll see if I can find it. I did this alphabet. That's kind of a variation of this, literally talking. I think I was talking to Heather, and I was like, just did it. I got into a flow state. So anyway, I didn't want to get off on a tangent. I'd love to hear more about things people would like to play with or develop or do a deeper dive with, or something different.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things is to really create that space for us to work. I think what Sharon does so beautifully is create that tone, but I like to create the structure. And we'll even be thinking about, what does the structure look like? Is it where we come and we have working sessions, or is it more instructional? If you remember Illuminating the Dark, we worked with word banks and haikus, and it was very much instructional for, I think, 4 sessions, I believe. And then, that was Illuminating the Dark. And then Dancing with the Dark, we had these bookends with prompts in between. And some of you were so wonderful to say, oh, I fell off after week 2, and that's fine. We took an intentional pause so that you could catch up. And you always have access to these recordings, so you can always go back. But what does this next piece look like? I'm going to go back to what Ludi said when they said, and more about finding our own expressive gestures for different moods and intentions. You have a couple of pieces that are they're seared. I shouldn't say seared, but they are definitely imprinted in my mind, of these circles that you've done, and just certain shapes that are expressive. And so it might be fun to create some expressive shapes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dee Dee's interested in journaling, how to make their own, how to keep it going over time, and later for inspiration.
Sure.
Yeah, structured chaos. I love that, Dee Dee. That's wonderful. And Sharon loved it too. She just turned into fireworks. That's great. Yeah, and if you remember, in both classes, one, she taught us how to make a book, and then in the second one, we talked about taking what we have and pulling it together. It can be very, very simple, but by putting it in a book, whether you start out with a book or putting your pieces and combining them and binding them into a book, both of those give our work some credit, some space to live and to be in.
I, in my limited technology capacity, created these little videos of me playing and improvising. And if we go ahead and cue it up, I can then talk about just kind of how, you know, we're returning back to the idea of flow and what is, I don't want to say required of flow, but what's helpful to us to practice so that we can get into that flow. So here is me the other day. I really didn't have, I had a plan, but I always in the process of writing, I end up going off onto some other tributary. So this year, I mentioned that at the beginning, I'm looking at how do I create with more ease and effortlessness. And there is a term that I have been more reacquainted with, and it's a Chinese term, and it's called Wu Wei, and it refers to like effortlessness and natural harmony, and how do we do without it being laden with that with so much burdensome effort. And so that's what I'm trying to do here is trust what I know. And that's where having the visual vocabulary of a cache of letter forms that I know very intimately. So Wu Wei is really about a flow state. And how do we flow freely into a relaxed calligraphic flow? First of all, I think we need to set the stage of having an attitude, like I did here, of just open curiosity, beginner's mind, be process oriented, have a sense of humor about what happens when you're not expecting something to happen. Keep going. Taking time, like I did here. I took a whole morning and I just played time and focus, allowing ourselves time to immerse. Even if it's writing out an alphabet, just immerse in it, making it, being really focused, but not focused with the intention of perfection, but focused with like all our senses engaged. What does it feel like? I was really noticing what it felt like on the page. I noticed the speed with which I was writing. And I just took note, oh, I'm not really taking time to put that pressure on the ends of all the letters. And then in that moment, I thought of that. I thought, well, maybe I can come back. Of course I can come back and do that. But I was so in the flow that I didn't, I just let it be what it was, each letter form. So also setting the stage, it's having comfort with and the knowledge of the letter form. So here I've been, like you, playing with those Romans so much that they're part of me now. They're an extension. Also, being in the flow here was, it was facilitated because of my comfort with the tools and materials that I'm using. And also having the attitude of play, as we all talked about earlier, play as being a very serious thing. I allow myself to play and experiment, that being part of the practice here. And also having a place to put it in, like having that's why I have the journal. And I just, we looked at the journal I have that's sitting here by my computer. And notice I did the title in reverse order. So not being bound to a particular order of where you put things on the page. That is another thing for me of how I stay in this flow. I also want to talk about back to the Wu Wei, the spontaneous state of natural harmony. Really, all of this is about helping you find a path and portal for your own way of connecting more deeply with yourself and being able to fully express who you are in your lettering. And how do we also back to flow state? I like what this writer Rory Mackey writes. Although you are taking action, there's a recognition that you, the doer, that you take yourself to be, isn't really the one calling the shots. You are but an instrument through which the breath of life moves. I'm going to read that again. You are but an instrument through which the breath of life moves. That's how I feel when I'm getting into this playful state, like what I'm doing here. As Rumi once asked, the breath of the flute player, does it belong to the flute? This flow state is characterized by effortlessness, ease, and allowing the right action to unfold at the right time in the right manner. And in watching myself and seeing like I didn't intend for that line to those lines to connect, I just say, oh, that's fine. But I'm going to share an inquiry with you that I put this to myself all the time. And I wrote this. Does art making have to be so hard or complicated or competitive? What would it be like to engage in art with the open, trusting attitude of curious traveler and audacious inventor, rather than one of fearful, hand-clenched combatant suited up for battle? What if we experienced art making as an adventure, a mysterious, fluid, dynamic, paradoxical process of co-creation with both intellect and intuition, intention and surrender? What if we dared to connect more personally and authentically with our art? What if we trust ourselves, mind, heart, and body to decide what is working or not in our art, as I'm doing here? What if we judge art less in terms of conventional beauty and more through the lens of raw emotional impact and authenticity? What if we acted like our humble what if we act like our humble creative efforts matter, even in a world filled with so many other talented and celebrated artists? What if we allow ourselves to move outside the lines to discover what we really want to express, why we want to express it, and how? And that is from my book that I'm writing, The Letters Are Yours, Becoming a Rebel Scribe. So this is me writing with ease. And yes, I knew that the topic was going to be about that, but I am really doing a stream of consciousness as I'm writing along. So it's an example of that, being in a flow state and using what I know effortlessly, playfully, joyfully. And in the process, I am taking my writing out for a walk, for a jog. It's not sitting waiting for me to be ready to make the epic artwork. It's just flowing.
I love it.
It's how little kids do it. We
Amen,
have
sister. That's me. That is it. That's exactly.
to go back. We have to remember what it was like to be 3 and 4 years old, and you just do it. There's
I
no,
love this.
we have all these strictures.
We do. And it's a dance for minute where it's like, I love what you spoke to in terms of what are we freeing ourselves from. It's like almost like freedom within the structures and freedom to relate to them differently, but it's also dance within and without, always in relation. Notice how I'm moving, but there's a structure that holds it all while we dance. And that is, I would love, even in these last few minutes, for us to take our pencil or whatever tool you have and play a little. And I'm happy to lead us all in that, again, with my simple tools and materials. The invitation, you don't have to do this now, but the invitation for this in the coming days is play with what you know. It doesn't have to look like mine. You've seen this before. And I am writing out the things that I want to remember this year. Oh, I remember to pull back up into the letter for in through the stroke. Breaking the rules, doing that, oh, all in one stroke. Is there a rule? Don't do what I do. Do what I do. Do what you do. Enjoy. Breathe. So that's my invitation. And it doesn't have to look anything like that. But take these letters out, make them your own, rebel with them, get them back into chiropractic shape, let them go again, elongate them, make them too fat, make them fat and narrow, and also make them your own. And anybody else.
I love it. We had a lot of heads down. We had a lot of people watching. Would love to see if anybody wants to hold up anything that they've created. Spotlight Yogi.
Yay.
Wonderful. Mainly because it popped out off the page. You're working on black. Nice.
Nice.
And then
Yeah.
I'll spotlight Jolene.
Nice.
Wow, Jolene knows how to fill a page.
Yay.
And then
Oh,
Sally.
yes. Yes.
Nice. And here comes Sally.
Yes.
Veronique, you'll be next.
Beautiful. Love that. Oh, cool. Yeah.
What a symphony, right?
Yes. Oh gosh, yeah. And hopefully it wasn't done like combatants suited up for battle, as I say, because that's honestly, that's how I used to be. I really have been the most tightly wound person I've ever met. And I would go into a workshop like in utter paralysis and fear, and also intimidated by everyone around me, like with, and I'm like, they're all so much better. Who am I to be in here? How many of you have had that experience where you just like, you kind of defeat yourself before you begin? So I am truly in recovery from a very, very strict and demanding and harsh and perfectionistic critical inner voice, which, by the way, around flow, I do want to say, I am not in battle. My critical voice is part of me. And I've just gotten to learn I've asked her to be to work in concert with me and to take all that energy, that fierce, what she's really doing is trying to protect me from failure. So I honor that. And then I say to her, okay, we're in this together. Let's use some of your energy to get out there and take risks. And so it's interesting having a different relationship with this very powerful force inside me that used to make me shrivel and shrink. And now it's like I use her fierceness to go not into battle, but to embrace all of it, the chaos, the structure, the dance within the discipline and the play. So that's just a little bit to consider too.
I love it. And I'm so happy that everyone was here to join all of us. We had probably over 100 people sign up. So I was really happy to see over half of that show up today. And I want to thank all of you for finding your way here and invite you to keep communicating with us. Let us know, what are you working on? What do you want to work on next? What are you exploring? And where do you want to go deeper? What you saw today, this is sort of what Sharon and I do in between the times that we get to meet with all of you. And we want to keep bringing you into that fold and find out what you want to do as well. So please share. Sally, I noticed you're unmuted. Did you want
Well, I
share
wanted
something?
to share something, given what Sharon just said. I just rejoined Scribbled Lives after a couple of years, and the first week we had to do the quote, "We're all in this together." And I did mine based on inspiration from this class. And so I thought I'd share it if you can allow me to share screen.
Beautiful.
So anyway, I thank you because you were truly the inspiration for this. And it was a great way to dive back into Scribbled Lives. And you just said this, and I thought I would share it. So there you go.
Thank you. Beautiful. And that is a great way to not end, but invite ourselves to another beginning here.
I want to thank all of you for being here today. I know you weren't sure what you were getting into, but we so love to have you in our creative space, and we want to do more of this. And we're going to still be thinking about how we're going to design this and what the content is. So please keep in touch with us, and we'll see you again soon.